How's it going, everyone? Cuppa Anime Joe here, and today, you guessed it, we are here for the chapter review of One Piece, number 1187, titled The Cause. And getting right into it, we pick up where we left off from last chapter with Luffy landing a solid, what appears to be Conqueror's Haki-laden blow squarely to Imu's face. Imu's got like the crushed cheek and the puffed lips, and he's flying back. Loki has the wide mouth, shocked face. And yeah, what a great way to start the chapter. Immediately, though, Imu wastes no time with his counterattack. He really doesn't even seem that perturbed by having been struck to begin with. And he uses Omen to generate two of the little, I'm going to call them Omen ghosts with the faces. And this is less related to this chapter, but more to Imu in general. I've thought about this a lot. I suspect that Maki is the actual power, like the quote-unquote energy that is fueling Imu's Omen techniques. So when we first got it, it was translated as Maki / Omen. They could be the same thing, but because Maki is so similar to Haki, I'm starting to wonder if they're meant to be separate, right? So like Omen is the technique, is the ability that Imu's using. Maki is the power source which he's using to fuel it. In any case, he generates 2 or 3 little Maki ghosts, and we find out, flame ghosts, that they are either sentient or they at least have the ability to be sentient. This doesn't mean that this is the case in every instance that he uses it. A simple blast might not be like that. But these ones are capable of receiving, understanding, and carrying out instructions. They're told to position themselves strategically on both Luffy and on Loki. Now, in terms of Loki, where the attack lands, Imu wants to strike the same spot that he had stabbed Loki earlier. So he's really like pinpoint hitting the same location on Loki. And we find out, right, that these particular flame ghosts of his Omen ability, they're like guiding techniques, right? He uses a technique called stigma. It's translated as stigma, but the kanji for it is resentful demon sword. And it uses those Omen flame ghosts as a targeting mechanism that guides his attack to land exactly where he wants it. And when he produces this technique, right, when he uses it, it creates a giant Omen sword that extends almost like Ichimaru Gin from Bleach. It extends forward and it chains with the Omen ghost he had placed earlier. And Loki takes a massive hit that sends him flying back. And this is pretty much, I think, the end of Loki's role in this fight, at least for now. He really seems to be down currently for the count, but it does leave some interesting setup, which we will get to later in the chapter. Another thing I'll touch on, but we will see later, is that the chain attack for Omen, the stigma, apparently can be dodged if you can shed the piece of clothing or the item that the Omen ghost, the flame ghost, attaches to. But we will come back to that one. Then we cut over to the Straw Hat Brooks group. So we got Jinbei, we got Usopp, we got Frankie, we got Nami, we got Brook. And they are trying and failing miserably, very miserably, to break the ice cube that Princess Shuri is in. And so this really, I think, kind of solidifies that Ragnar truly is the only thing that's capable of melting the ice produced by Ragnar. The Straw Hats are failing, at least this group, and Imu's Omen attack also failed. So, you know, it's not like we have Luffy or even Zoro and Sanji here giving it a shot. I am pretty sure that Oda is establishing or confirming that Ragnar is truly the only one who can do it. And we have a funny little gag here that I laugh about a lot. Brook walks up and puts his hand on it, and he's like, "It's cold to the touch." No, wait, actually, I'm not really sure. It doesn't feel cold to the touch. And Nami is flabbergasted. She's like, "You can't tell?" In shock. And then in comes Frankie. You might be starting to see a trend here. In comes Frankie, and he touches the ice itself, and he's like, "You're right. When I touch it, I'm just not sure that it is actually cold." And then Nami's like, she'd be slapping them if she could. And she's like, "You non-humans just can't tell. It's a huge block of ice. It's definitely cold." Behind Nami, we have Jinbei with what I'm going to call maybe an observation hockey indicator, or just a, "Hey, that's strange" indicator. He is turned around, and just after the scene, in comes Loki, who gets thrown into the block of ice. Of course, the crew is surprised, and, you know, Loki's like looking not that good. He's looking like he's in a lot of pain. And along with him, you guessed it, in comes Ragnar. And Ragnar hits the ice. I guess this automatically melts it. Like, maybe the melting of the ice doesn't need to be directly engaged by Ragnar. You know, it's possible that just a tap from Ragnar melts this ice, because that's really what happened. Maybe this is a little more than a tap, but Ragnar just falls on it, and the ice starts to melt. The crew is shocked that Loki was beaten. They're like, "No way, he was beaten?" And they see that he's been stabbed in the chest. And like I said before, Loki, he's bleeding. He's down. He doesn't look too good. Ragnar's freaking out, squeaking. And, you know, when you think about all the damage that Loki has taken throughout the course of this arc, it is no surprise to me that he's finally actually really truly starting to feel it. And, you know, I think that this is going to really set up the 1v1 with Luffy and Imu, which the end of this chapter nails that in. And because the ice block is melting, in the next chapter, we might get to see Shuri or Gunko. We don't know if she's going to still be getting controlled or not. And we'll probably get some kind of interaction about how that whole scenario is going to play out with this group of the Straw Hats. And I want to note that Ragnar and Usopp are both here while Loki is currently down for the count. I'm probably going to try to make a video about this, talking about potential Usopp power-ups. And I don't think that Ragnar is going to be a permanent power-up for Usopp, though I do think it's going to lead to some new abilities for him. But I do think there's a great possibility that Usopp is going to pair up with Ragnar, that Ragnar is going to see Usopp demonstrate on Elbaph being a brave warrior of the sea. And right here, with the two of them in the same area, Usopp is going to wield the legendary hammer Ragnar and do something cool with it. Either defend somebody, launch an attack, something's going to happen. Now, if you might be wondering, how is the hell is Usopp going to carry Ragnar? And that's a great question, right? Because earlier in the arc, Loki had even told Hiruden, "You guys can't even carry Ragnar." I'm starting to think that that might have less to do with Ragnar's size and more to do with who he deems worthy, right? Let's look. Ragnar is a ancient, magical squirrel hammer. I would not be surprised if he can alter his size to pair with whomever he deems worthy, which means that a regular giant who's worthy could wield Ragnar, or Usopp, who is most assuredly worthy. Don't you sleep on Usopp. might be able to wield Ragnar. And so I see the setup coming together here. And I knew that, I mean, Ragnar's Loki's. This is why I don't see a scenario where Usopp keeps the hammer. I think he will be with Loki until the end of the story. So for this kind of situation to happen, we needed Loki to at least temporarily be down for the count, but with Ragnar still being up, which we see here on this panel. Before we continue, a little bit of shameless self-plugging here, call to action if you will. If you like my videos, if you like hearing me yap, hey, if you love my beard, I would invite you to please like and subscribe, hit that bell icon, leave a comment. All forms of interaction are incredibly important for small channels, which mine most certainly is. And with that, back to your regularly scheduled programming. And now earlier I had mentioned that Imu's attack can be dodged if you're able to remove the targeting flame cloud, right? And so the way the omen flame, whatever you want to call it, the way Luffy did this is it had attached to his shoulder, right, on his cloak. So he rips off his cloak as Imu's launching Stigma, and then he can dodge below it. So Luffy dips underneath the connecting beam of the sword portion of Stigma, and then he's charging right at Imu. I also forgot to mention earlier, but Luffy, when he saw Imu up close, he's like, man, this guy's way creepier when he's up close. And now, of course, they're both really encountering each other, and this fight's kicking off, and it's getting up close and personal. And now, I really like this part of the chapter. I like where this is going. We have Zoro and Sommers interacting with each other. And Zoro is basically like, he's got a smile on his face. He's chilling. He's straight chilling. And he's like, you guys ruined our reunion, our party, our fun with our old friends on Elbaph. You're going to pay for this. Okay. You're going to pay for this. And Sommers, being Sommers, is like, oh, well, I am sorry about that. You know, man, we're just here to pick up 10 or 20 kids at most. Not too bad. My associate should be bringing them over from the village any minute now. And then we'll be out of your hair. And Zoro, what I like here about this next part of this chapter is that we get to see a rare moment, okay, of Zoro exhibiting his unwavering belief in Sanji. Now, I want to note, so that people don't go crazy when they hear this, that sentiment is always there. Zoro has always thought that way. He simply does not always show it. And that's what we're about to see here. So Zoro's like, is that so? What a coincidence. One of my associates is also swinging by the village. But you know what, Mr. Shepherd Sommers, I added that part, I don't think your guy will be the one coming back. I love this interaction because Sommers and Zoro are both terribly smug here, and it is so much fun. Sommers like, oh, you don't say, may I ask why? I don't know if this is going to be how the official translates it, because Oda doesn't have the Straw Hats offing people, but Zoro's like, because he'll be dead. And then the fight kicks off. This is when they really start battling. Sommers thrusts his thorn sword forward. That could be a tongue twister. Then it extends out, and it looks like he's kind of like swinging it to the side like this against Zoro, or maybe it's like a jab. And Zoro blocks it, and Sommers like, you really have no idea just how awesome we are right now. And what this is setting up, we're going to see this at the end of the chapter with Sanji as well. This is the moment, I'm fairly certain, where Zoro is going to gain more mastery over his Conqueror's Haki. And Sanji is going to definitively unlock and possibly even along with this gain some level of mastery of his Conqueror's Haki. To me, we already know Zoro has it. It is a foregone conclusion that Sanji is going to have it as well. Oda has put this directly in our face with parallels by showing us Scopper Gaban and Silver's Rayleigh, the wings of the former Pirate King, Goldie Roger. All three of them had Conqueror's Haki. That trio, they all had Conqueror's Haki. So for Luffy to surpass Roger, and he will, we can be sure of that. His wings, they gotta surpass Roger's as well. Zoro's gonna overtake Rayleigh. Sanji is gonna overtake Scopper. So it is very evident that Sanji will be getting Conqueror's Haki. That's a rant I could have saved for later. But yes, that's the direction that these fights are going. And now, speaking of Sanji, we cut over to Sanji. And I love this. I love the way this was handled, because rather than freaking out or going crazy, Sanji calmly deduces his current situation and identifies the problems that are being faced and where he can and cannot help. And through this, he concludes that the best way for him to deal with this situation is to just take out Killingham straight out. And so, he lights a cigarette, Sanji style. I'm starting to grasp the situation. The first problem, a monster bigger than any giant, which is the rain god Zaza, is trying to kidnap the kids. And boy, is that a pain to deal with. Their mothers, their parents, their caretakers are crying their eyes out. Ripley looks like she's really starting to feel the damage she took earlier. And so she's crying out to Colin, who's sobbing and apologizing that he got caught again. But we can tell the giants will not stop until they get their kids back. But Zaza, we don't have our secret Zaza weapon here, which is Jinbei. He's dealing with a block of ice. So without him, they're getting washed. Pun totally intended. Sanji can't stand the sight of the crying mothers, but he also acknowledges that Zaza is a giant woman and he can't kick it, which is another pain in the ass. But like I mentioned earlier, he realizes, well, if I take out Killingham, I don't have to deal with the rest of the stuff. Taking out Killingham will take out the dream demon Zaza, and that will free the kids. It's 2 birds, maybe even 3 birds with 1 kick. And so Sanji flies in with an attack on Killingham, and he blocks it. And he's like, the cause of this is really just you. And then Killingham looks like he's trying to maybe strafe around or kind of avoid a direct confrontation, maybe to keep his ability going. But Sanji's just too fast. Sanji's like, you can't outrun me, bro. I can even fly through the air. I have skywalk. You ain't getting away. And Killingham comments on how tough Sanji is, but that there is a big difference between being tough and being immortal, which is what the God's Knights practically are. They're surely they're not completely immortal, but they are so much closer to being immortal than anybody else in the story of One Piece. But Killingham does admit that Sanji's deduction is right, and that he's saying if you were to get rid of me, you would actually take care of the dream demon as well. And Sanji lets him know, I know your weakness, bro. One Mr. Scopper Gaban told me your weakness. He told me what you can't stand up to. And Killingham, running his mouth, maybe realizing, because if he knows, he knows. And he asks Sanji, how interesting. So you, curly brow, can use Conqueror's Haki. And here we get the actual dialogue and the conversation between Scopper Gaban and Sanji. So we see it cut back to the scene. Sanji gets thrown back into the rubble, by the way, and he's remembering this as that happens. First, we see Scopper say, "Your captain is one of the 4 emperors. You should be meticulous if you intend to have his back." This was when he was scolding Zoro about just leaking his Conqueror's haki and having no real control over it, something that both Luffy and Scopper noticed. Then we have Sanji flying in, asking, "What about me? Do I really not have Conqueror's haki?" And this is something, what Scopper says is something I did sort of wonder about. If Sanji's problem this whole time is his attitude, his demeanor, and maybe specifically tied to his Germa roots. But let's first see what Scopper says. "You have the traits of one who might, but somehow I get the impression you burden yourself with painful uncertainty. For it to manifest, one must be a king." And then Sanji's reminiscing on this, right? He's like a king, and he's thinking about Luffy and how Luffy truly wants to be Pirate King with all of his heart. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what kind of king Sanji will become. How is that going to manifest, right? And in what way will he shed his doubts, come to accept who he is? What bridges must Sanji cross within himself to clear the gap between where he is now and whatever form of him will become a king, will become a conqueror, capable of learning how to use Conqueror's haki, capable of taking out the God's Knights, but most importantly, capable of supporting Luffy to become king of the pirates. And then this brings us to the end of the chapter. It seemed like a little bit of a short one this week, but also with a lot of combat, fighting scenes. And we have the stare down. Imu's like, "So thou hast finally revealed thyself." And I love the text here. This is really cool. I'll have it up. But it says Saint Nerona Imu versus Monkey D. Luffy. So we know, we can be certain that this is the 1v1 that we have been waiting for since the moment Imu dropped down. And there's a caption, "Who truly has the qualities of a king?" And then it talks about a special cover and color spread next issue. And we see that there's no break next week. So we're moving into the end of Elbaph. Right, regardless of how this all turns out, we can be certain that the arc is nearing its end. We have our final round of fights pretty much set up. Imu versus Luffy, Killingham versus Sanji, Sommers versus Zoro, and then Brook's group dealing with Gunko. You know, I think that maybe this crew is going to get a rematch against the Ero no Mi. And she's probably not going to be she's not going to be Princess Shuri right away. I think this group is going to have to fight Gunko and Brook, be it through awakening his devil fruit, unlocking haki, some combination of Brook's soul power and his music, I think is going to be completely integral towards freeing Shuri from Imu and actually bringing her back. And we're going to get that heartfelt reunion. And Usopp is going to wield Ragnar. Mark my words. But there it is. That's the end of the chapter. Have I missed anything? Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Please sound off in the comments below. I'd love to hear about it. And with that, I would like each and every one of you to have an excellent rest of your day.